The rule of one states that you are writing every piece of writing that you have for one reader. You are making them one offer. You're making them one promise. And it all falls under the umbrella of one big idea.
Hey everyone, welcome to Bright and Early, the podcast for people building early stage startups. I'm your host, Brian Ray. I talk to entrepreneurs, product people, designers, and marketing pros about their experiences during the early days to help you feel just a little less crazy. My guest today is Alli Blum. Alli is an expert in copywriting and onboarding optimization for SaaS products. She helps her clients understand why some users bail on their trial and others upgrade. So if you're struggling with high churn or low activation rates, Alli has wisdom you'll want to hear. Alli, welcome to the show.
Hey, Brian, thanks for having me.
It's such a pleasure. I really appreciate you coming on, and I've been enjoying digging into your work and researching this episode. So can't wait to hear everything you've got to share.
Cool.
So tell us just a bit about your background and how you got into this whole world.
Well, a few years ago, I was running a coloring for grown-ups business, and it sounds pretty cool, but I was pretty miserable, and I decided not to run that business anymore and knew I wanted to start another one. So I went through a user research project of interviewing about 50 people in a lot of different industries, from hardware to sustainability, which, by the way, is not actually a business category. It's more of a philosophy or approach. I studied Mandarin for 9 years, so I thought maybe something to do with China. And through that process, I ended up learning about the microconf community, learning about software as a service businesses. And I started really enjoying the conversations I was having with those folks. I would follow people who tweeted about microconf and email them and say, hey, can you just tell me what SaaS is like? Just tell me about your world. And then I started reaching out to some folks at larger, more established SaaS companies as well. And what I really found compelling was that SaaS has relatively repeatable problems from one business to the next. So every SaaS business is struggling. Every SaaS business is unique, but we're all struggling with the same kinds of problems in a way that doesn't exist, or maybe doesn't exist to an extent that I find that interesting in other industries. So that made me say, okay, SaaS has several repeatable problems. They can be solved with my skill set, which is marketing and writing. How do I tie these things together? And I decided to focus first on onboarding as a challenge. And there were a lot of reasons for it, but one was how complex, how multi-departmental onboarding is. What is onboarding? No one can really agree. Well, I guess there's illusions of agreement, but is onboarding what happens during a trial? Is onboarding what happens after the sale? Is onboarding a sales process? Is it about customer success? What's the difference between onboarding for someone who's the first user, the first account creator at a company, and onboarding for the 1000th? What's the difference between onboarding for someone who's going to be using the product every day versus someone who's introducing it with the hope that their team will get really excited? What about the differences between product champions who sign up and people who need to get buy-in from their boss?
Mm-hmm.
So many interesting questions that's where I decided to start. And it kind of cracked open this world of, there's within this what I thought originally within this one tiny problem of onboarding, there's all of these other great areas for exploration.
Okay. There's so much about, just the talking there about onboarding customers, number one, or say 1 through 10 or 100 versus onboarding 1,000 plus, and details, the nitty gritty there. I can't wait to get into that with you, but you do not get to mention that you ran a coloring for grown-ups business and then just keep on sailing. How did that happen? And what, yeah, just go.
Great question. So my introduction into the world of online business or technology businesses was at an e-commerce company, and I did a lot of art and when I was younger. Well, a few years ago, before this craze really took off, I had this idea. I said, "Oh, I like drawing. I like coloring. Wouldn't it be fun to start a coloring for grown-ups business? Everyone loves coloring." And this was also around the time when mindfulness and well, I don't want to call it wellness, but mindfulness was becoming more popular, more mainstream. And I said, "Oh, this sounds fun. And what a relaxing business to start. We're just going to come together and sit and color and focus on our pencils as they move across the page." And we ran a bunch of coloring parties, and it was really, really stressful. I do not recommend it. Starting a relaxation business if you want to be relaxed. Planning an event, finding a venue, coordinating food, refreshments, inviting people, figuring out how to make the ticket price work and the cost of the physical product. It was not for me. So it was not the kind of problem I enjoyed solving.
Okay. And so you had this background in writing and in marketing. You're doing all these interviews, you stumble upon the microconf world. And so then this is the point at which you begin to start building this business and the work that you're doing now, which is helping SaaS founders to have a better onboarding process through better copywriting and more thoughtful strategy.
Yeah, it was
where we're at now.
Yeah, sort of two-pronged approach there. So there were a couple of conversations where I was having with SaaS founders, and this was very early on. So this was before I even knew about jobs to be done. This was before I had any kind of research framework of my own. This was just one person asking other people questions, sometimes getting good answers and sometimes not. And I started to notice that this idea of onboarding was challenging. The founders very often did not have a writing background. Some did, but more often they were, I found myself speaking with technical founders or designers. So I said, okay, this is a complementary skill set. This sounds like there could be a space here. Words need to be written. I can write them. And at the same time, I was also learning a lot more about conversion copywriting from copy hackers and from Joanna Wiebe, who is the foremost authority on writing. I cannot recommend her enough. In going through some of her trainings and learning how she works with SaaS businesses and getting really great consultant education around specializing, also learning from Brennan Dunn at Double Your Freelancing, became really clear that onboarding was a place where I could specialize. And it would be a place where there'd be a problem I could take from one business to the next. I would never have to organize or plan another event, worry about getting the food for everyone to show and getting everyone to show up. And what was so interesting to me is that conversion copywriting is really about using the exact words your customers use, reflecting them back, joining the conversation happening in their head and nudging them along to help them learn more and make a decision. And this is really interesting to me because it's unlike a lot of the writing I had done previously, which is content writing, which very often will start from this place of what is the problem? How do we teach someone how to solve it? And this is more about how do we nudge someone along to take an action, to make a decision. And that was very, very interesting to me and very cool to see that you could use voice of customer data in this way. And I should also say, we should probably define voice of customer data. Have you heard this term? I think okay.
Yeah, but well, I should have said no. Pretend I've never heard of that before.
Okay. So if you haven't heard of voice of customer data, no shame in that. The voice of customer data is the qualitative data, the exact words your customers use whenever they are talking about their problem or your product or their competitive alternatives to your product. Voice of customer data lives in your chat logs anytime someone asks for help. It lives in competitive review sites, G2 Crowd, Capterra, Amazon. It lives in forums where people are asking, hey, how can I solve this problem? This is what's going on. I need to find a solution. And it exists in the transcripts of the conversations that you have with your customers, with people you're talking to. So there's so many great sources of that data. And once you have it, you can really start to, you can do a lot with it. But for the purposes of this conversation, since there is so much you can do with it. You can use it to plot what's going on from the moment before someone gets to your site, when they sign up for your trial, when they're in the middle of the trial, and then all the way through to whether they decide to upgrade or to cancel. And then you can use those exact words to write your emails, to write your landing pages, to build additional content that may be able to support your people as they're getting started.
Yeah. What's your advice for founders who are looking for this voice of customer data? They want to write better. They want to have better conversion copywriting. All of this is resonating. But the piece that they have missing is that they don't even have 100 customers or 10 customers. They're still, pre-launch, trying to get their they're getting ready to launch and the marketing page is getting pulled together. They want this data. What's your advice to those founders?
So if you are, those are two important distinctions. So if you're pre-marketing page, if you don't have an email list, if you don't have relationships with anyone, there's so much voice of customer data living out in the wild. So you can go to, for example, I'll walk you through a process of what a review mining, I stumbled over review mining a few times. So what a review mining process might look like. So let's say, for example, you are starting a product in, let's pick a really competitive category. We'll say invoicing software. There are a ton of invoicing softwares out there, and they're all a little bit different. Some just will give you an invoice. Some have invoicing and time tracking. Some have invoicing and time tracking, and also when you sign a contract, it will automatically trigger a workflow, and your clients will, if you're a consultant serving clients, then it will automatically go through. And let's say your unique approach is that you are building an invoicing software that is custom to, we'll say, the landscaping industry. You may want to look into really great places for where you can collect that data. You may want to look at what people say in reviews of similar landscaping or similar invoicing software on review sites. And you may also want to go to some landscaping forums and say, what are people talking about that is their main problem with their invoicing software, with managing clients, with getting paid, with maybe you discover through this process that what people are really complaining about, the threads that have the most voluminous complaints, are a completely different problem than the one you originally set out to solve. Organize them all, put them into, if you're just getting started and you truly have zero budget, put them into a Google spreadsheet, copy and paste. I highly, 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 highly recommend copying and pasting, to the point of, I'll just say I require you copy and paste your data. Don't take a screenshot, because a screenshot you can't copy and paste again. You can't manipulate the text. You can't organize it. It becomes an image file. Copy and paste, put it into a Google sheet or an Airtable, say where you got the data from, and you can start to accumulate different tags. You'll start to notice different patterns about what there might be and how you can use it. Now, once you have a marketing page, this is a really great opportunity to set up some automated emails that come from you, and the from name should be from a person. And in your welcome email, you need to use this phrase, and this is another Joanna Wiebe lesson. What's going on in your world that led you to sign up today? Now, it's extremely important that you use that exact phrasing. Don't use why did you sign up, because there's so much baggage we have when people ask us why we do things. We often don't know why we do things. But when you ask a question that says, hey, what's going on that brought you here? You're going to get responses that are structured like this. I am a landscaper. I run a small firm with 300 customers. We mow lawns. And I'm considering expanding to a new area. I want to be able to have better processes. And that's why I signed up for your product. People will very often answer this question, I am a X person, with some context around what that type of person is. And here's what I'm working on right now. And that helps give you a really great piece of data into the exact moment when someone is changing their habit, when they need to change a habit, when they're motivated to make a decision. On one of your earlier episodes, I think it was either Claire or Val. I think it was Andrea. I think Andrea Hill was talking about why you can't ask people the questions, would you use this feature?
Right.
because they don't know.
Right.
And changing habits is very hard. But when you ask people these questions right at the moment they have changed their habit, you start to understand what that moment really looks like. And then you can take that data and you can reflect it back into your onboarding messaging, into your web copy, into how you write your content, because you know what that moment is when people are coming to you. Every guest you've had has talked about jobs to be done, search frameworks, which is
it was
great.
not intentional. It just keeps happening.
It's pretty in vogue right now. And one of the great things about jobs to be done is that it gives you this framework, which I highly recommend you consider, gives you a way of saying, okay, here's what I need to happen as a result of using this product.
Okay. Well, so that start you mentioned there at the beginning of that, review mining first of all, and for as a strategy for collecting voice of customer data when you don't have any customers yourself. That's very practical and useful. So that's fantastic. And you mentioned there in your answer, and so this first automated email that you want to set up, that's going to be, hey, welcome, like what's going on in your world that caused you to sign up today? Full stop. That's the end of the email.
Great.
In all practical purposes. Yeah.
Great clarifying question. So there is a little bit more that goes into it. So Val had mentioned you don't want your subject line to say, hey, welcome to
feature
X
audit. Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
So whatever your welcome subject line is, and there are a lot of different ones that are toyed with. A year or so ago, the you're in read,
Yep.
was pretty popular. That one, I've seen that one quite a lot. You can experiment. A welcome email, I tend to see pretty high open rates on it anyway, because people are expecting it and they've got that momentum when they sign up. So there's a few different approaches that you can take, and it really depends on what kind of product you have, what kind of customers you have, what kind of relationship you're trying to build, who you are. Val, I think she also mentioned she shares 5 cool facts about her in her welcome email. There's another marketer. Okay, I'm pretty sure it's Danny Hart, and she loves goats, and her welcome email is all about how much she loves goats. So you can really think outside the box in how you're welcoming people. But there are 2 things I would say are really important. Thing number 1, your welcome email should make it clear that you are improving the person, not the person's process. So the person is coming, a person signs up for a product because they have a problem that they want solved, but they want to be a better version of themselves. They want their job to be less difficult. They want to be a better researcher. They want to be a better marketer, whatever it is that they want to be. And that doesn't mean using that exact language, but once you've done a little bit of voice of customer review mining, you might be able to go back to our landscaping example, say, hey, there are more, let's say it's a more increasingly competitive environment. Maybe you say there are more landscaping firms, more lawn mowing businesses today than there ever have been. And increasingly people are planting their lawns with grass that doesn't need to be mowed as often. So what does that look like for your business? Well, one opportunity that you have is to make your process more efficient so that even though you're operating in this increasingly competitive environment, you're still going to be able to find opportunities to remain profitable. I really want to help you do that.
Okay. But the point is to keep it brief, make it personal. Both the goat example and Val talking about her 5 things about herself is that everybody that email is automated. Everybody knows that email is automated. But so I guess a follow-up question to that is, like, I wanted to ask you a little bit about voice, like your own brand voice, your own person's voice, and putting that into your automated emails so that, is it a fair assumption that that's going to increase reply rates, engagement rates, etc.? So you just talk a little bit about voice and how you think about that.
Voice is a sandbox that I don't really play in too often.
Okay. And
there's a few reasons for that. So how you build your voice guidelines, how you build your tone guidelines, some companies have these. But at your earliest stage, voice guidelines may not be the best way to spend your time.
Yeah,
Rather,
there's not going to be like a voice guideline document for a company that's
yeah,
super early stage.
yeah, yeah. There are so many other guidelines that I would say, even within the world of marketing, within the world of how you organize your research, that are going to be far much more important. I'm all for process. I know there's a tangent to this, is that there's a lot of debate over when you add process and which processes and how much documentation of the processes. And someone who's always coming in as the consultant, the more documented process that there already is, the easier it is to do stuff. And that's at all stages of companies. So anyway, that's a tangent. But all that to say, the more that you can reflect your customer's voice using that voice of customer data, that's the best. That's very often the best option that you can have when you're getting started. And that means using the exact words that they use to describe their problem and not summarizing them, not attempting to come up with a way of reframing it so that it sounds sharper, so that it's marketing speak, so that it sounds like it's just generic enough that maybe you have two different kinds of landscaping companies. Maybe you have people who specialize in treating sick trees and people who specialize in lawn fertilizer. You don't want to write for both of those, and just for the sake of being, we just want to have one generic version. There's a lot of ways that you can. Oh, doesn't that sound like a cop-out by telling you that there's a lot of ways that you could talk to these different groups without telling you what those groups are? Well, that's probably, I wouldn't like that. So the two different, when you have these two different groups, that's actually a really good segue into one of the other topics we were chatting about before, which is that in conversion copywriting, you always want to make sure you're writing for one audience. And this is another great Joanna Wiebe copy hackers lesson, which is called the rule of one. The rule of one states that you are writing every piece of writing that you have for one customer, one reader. You are making them one offer. You're making them one promise. And it all falls under the umbrella of one big idea.
Okay. But is it, and so is it fair to say though that you may have multiple segments or multiple audiences who match different use cases for your SaaS product, but you want to have done some segmentation prior? You want to be smart about segmenting along the way so that you have multiple bits of content that speak to one person, one use case, one path forward. Is that fair to? Okay. Hey friends, this is a great time to pause and let you know that Bright and Early is brought to you by Transistor.fm. Transistor offers you professional podcast hosting and analytics. They host this very podcast that you're listening to right now. And my friends, I got to tell you, it could not be easier. I can tell you from personal experience. As you also probably know, podcasting is becoming one of the best ways to develop a closer relationship with your audience. And so if you're thinking about starting a podcast, trust me, look no further. Just visit transistor.fm, and if you decide to sign up, let them know that Brian sent you. So that definitely ties into, one of the closing questions I wanted to ask you, which is if I've got zero budget to invest in, bringing in an onboarding expert like yourself, somebody who specializes in customer research. I don't have any budget to invest in that just yet, but I know I need to be spending some time there. How would you recommend I spend my time? What can I do to at least not be terrible at at this part of the process?
The first thing that I do with every client, the first thing I recommend to everyone is to set up a few of these emails. Now, like you said earlier, they are automated emails. Everyone knows they're automated emails. We don't want to automate the human part of the relationship building. However, there is something to be said for sending an email very soon after people sign up, because it does generate, it's right in that momentum. It generates a lot of, people are ready to respond because they're thinking about you when they get that email.
Yep.
So emails at a couple of key inflection points. Email number one, what's going on in your world that led you to sign up today? And that goes out to folks who sign up for a trial. If you have people who are who are also on a team related project. You can also have another one that goes out to people who are invited, and you can change the question a little bit today, saying something like, hey, how did you learn about this tool? Or what do you think that you're going to be able to accomplish with this tool? That gets a little bit, it's like next level. It's like level 2. We're talking level 1 here. Okay, so then the next question is, at the end of the trial, you can send folks an email who don't upgrade to say, hey, was there something you were hoping to do that you were not able to accomplish? And again, this gets it really targeted around what was happening as opposed to why it was happening. Asking people, why did you decide not to do something, is a very, very difficult question, as anyone who has ever asked a child why they didn't clean their room or why they didn't brush their teeth would know. There's 1,000 reasons, and none of them are going to be the immediately addressable.
Well, no, but that's a great question to ask. I mean, the initial question, what's going on in your world that caused you to sign up? That is, why did you hire us? If they don't convert through their trial process, the question is, you're asking, why did you fire us?
Right.
So that's an excellent question. As far as that first one, what's going on in your world, should we, as part of the automated process, like a day later, say, hey, did you miss this? Or like, my question is basically, if somebody doesn't respond to that first question, should we automate a nudge to try to get them to respond, or you ask it once and you just let it go?
That's a good question. I've never thought about automating a nudge for that one before. Ooh, I don't know. First instinct,
that's fair. I mean, yeah, go ahead. What's your first instinct?
My first instinct is no.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean you shut down the relationship, because you have people coming in. You've gone to Val's site. You've got her dinner party strategy sequence all set. So you are creating these other opportunities where you're having conversations with human-to-human conversations, maybe through automated emails. But there are other opportunities to get people to respond to you in different emails. So maybe if you notice that you're not getting really good data there, maybe your third or fourth email is, for example, hey, we're doing free custom setups if setup is hard, or we're doing, I can build you a custom workflow. I don't know, you can do something for them. You can give something that is involving some degree of manual effort, and you can say, hey, would this be interesting to you? And that creates an opportunity to have a conversation with them and ask them that question face to face, which also, I should say, if people do respond and they do answer that question of what's going on, respond back, because that is a huge relationship building opportunity.
Totally. Yeah, something you said there made me think like that. Well, so that would be an interesting way to follow up to the people who don't respond to the what's going on in your world email, rather than tap, 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 hey, please respond.
Yeah.
Automate to them, you're eligible for concierge onboarding. This is blah, 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 and offer them value in order to get the conversation going.
Exactly. Yeah.
So then what if I am ready to commit some budget to this kind of work? What sort of things could I expect to dig into? What does an engagement with you specifically look like?
Okay, so 2 levels of budget. So if you're ready to invest a little bit of budget, but not a lot of budget, what I would recommend doing is, as you set up these email sequences, these automated emails, also set up a qualitative research repository. Now, quantitative data gets all the love. There are so many products for so many people working at SaaS companies to make all of the data flow through Metabase and go in and out and all the different warehousing. But that same level does not exist at most companies for qualitative data, which is why setting a qualitative research repository up from the beginning means you will have in a year or two, you'll have a year or two worth of qualitative data you'll be able to pump out to whoever you hire. You'll be able to give people who are joining your team or who are your consultants access to all of the amazing insights that you have collected. To give you an example, when I have set up this email of what's going on in your world that led you to sign up, or even for churned customers, why did you cancel, or what was going on that led you to cancel? over 6 months, you may be able to generate somewhere between 50, 100, 200, 300 responses, depending on how many signups you get. Then you have this great data set that you can start to say, what are the patterns? Now, analyzing qualitative data manually, hard. Analyzing quantitative data when it is in a repository with built-in rule setting and automated charts, less hard. Still, you have to think a little bit, but less hard. I recommend Enjoy HQ. It's a company I have a great working relationship with, but I get no money from telling you that they are one of my favorite SaaS teams of all time. And you can set up your email so they will auto forward straight in. You can sync up your chat transcript so they'll go in as well. You can set up a Twitter integration so that anytime someone mentions your business or a hashtag that's related to your business, that can also go in. So anytime you're ready to say, all right, we want to ask a new research question, we can look at the data we already have. We want to consider building a new feature. What evidence do we have that this is something that people want, and why would they want it? Or, hey, we're experiencing a problem at this inflection point when people sign up, or our quantitative data has told us that half of our customers will churn after 8 months. Your qualitative data might tell you why. You can set up some cool filters to say, what are those chat support requests that people give in the 30 days before they cancel? What are they asking for help for? How can we quantify that?
Yeah. Well, let me ask you real quick. I mean, a qualitative data repo, are we talking about a Google Drive folder with categorized in there, or how do you recommend setting that up? And
so Enjoy HQ,
what does it actually look like?
Enjoy HQ is like looking at okay, let's see if I can pull it up from memory. You can search. They have a search feature. You can see all of the data. So Google Drive, very hard to work with. This will pull up each. Very, very hard. Don't recommend it. If you're just getting started and you have less than 100 data points, use Google Drive or use it. It's fine. Right. Or if you're working for a specific project and you know exactly what you need and it's not data that you're going to be using again and again, or maybe you will. Honestly, I think there needs to be an entire show about voice of customer data and how you manage it, but that's for another time. The repo looks like having every single item that you upload or ticket that comes in is its own document, and you can search for them. Each support chat that comes in, hey, I need help setting up getting paid for the first time with my invoice. Okay, that gets tagged by the product area. You can tag it by whatever type of user they are, and then you can look at them individually. And then there's also a section where you can run these cool graphs that says, okay, bring up all the people who signed up 30 days ago, and I want them to be categorized by how we tagged them or the properties that we have assigned to them.
Got it. Okay, cool.
It's an intense tool. It takes a lot of time. It's not cheap.
Okay.
But it's good.
I misunderstood when you recommended Enjoy HQ. This is somebody who's offering, like their product does this.
That's their products.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I heard it as Enjoy HQ as somebody who does this well. You should follow them building it in public. No, this is what they do.
This is what they do. Yeah.
Okay.
You should follow their blog. It's very good. But
yeah. All right. I'm gonna check them out. Okay, listeners. So if you've got budget, check out Enjoy HQ and see what you can do to start integrating there. And if you don't, then maybe think about ways that you can hack that process for free for now. Okay, let's see, Alli. So the final thing that I would love to ask you about, you run your own business, you work with founders, startups of all size. It is a stressful thing to do this. And so are there any practices that you have found helpful to manage your own stress that you'd like to share?
There are some things that I have found work well, and then they work less well, and some things that I don't expect to work well do work well. But for me, there's two things that tend to be really helpful. One is keeping to a regular schedule and going outside to take a 20-minute walk at least a few times a week. And that's separate from any kind of additional exercise that may be happening. At the walking process from going out, walking next to trees, doing some forest bathing really helps. But I've also found that what can be really helpful for me personally is thinking that every industry is going to be stressful in its own way. And whatever I am stressed about, maybe it's something that is unique, but more likely it's something that is common in businesses like mine, among people like me. We may have some qualities that are unique to us, but for the vast majority of what we do, it's fairly similar to other industries. And it can be harmful to think that, to put that extra pressure on yourself, depending on what the pressure is. If your business is going under and you may have to shut down, that's a different kind of existential stress. But if it's day-to-day stress, yeah. Whew,
Thanks for that.
That was a doozy.
Yeah. My guest today has been Alli Blum. Alli, thanks so much for taking the time to chat with me and share your thoughts and expertise with our listeners.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Brian.
Some vocal show notes or closing thoughts from me. I think that the process of doing review mining for conversion copywriting is a great, just actionable takeaway from this episode. If we were all of us to take 45 minutes at some point this week and apply that to whatever it is that we're working on, I'm pretty convinced that we would learn something, most especially if you find yourself in the position right now where you're still working on your idea and you haven't quite launched it, or you have launched it, but you don't have many customers, or you've got a sense that the people who have signed up aren't going to be your long-term, best fit, optimal customer. What a great way to kind of hack your way around that process than to find out where your people are hanging out, look at your competitors, what are people saying about them, and kind of, trick yourself into thinking that these are your customers, those are your support requests, this is your customer support forum. How are you going to respond to that? And using their language in your materials. And I noticed Alli said, a number of times, like, copy and paste their exact words, their exact language. This is, it's fantastic advice. I think the reason it completely resonated with me is I've observed myself doing this so many times where you want to summarize. I think she even used that as an example. Don't summarize what they're saying. Just copy and paste it. I'll catch myself trying to summarize 2 or 3 bits of feedback into one sentence, or I think what they probably meant there was this thing that I've already built, or this thing I've already envisioned. Are you nodding your head up and down? So I think that's just really fantastic advice to make it a rule. I'm going to use their exact language, and why not? Why wouldn't we do that? And the answer is that for some reason we want to bundle and summarize so that we can maybe that's a shortcut, or it appeals to more people. So I think that there's a lot going on there. Something useful to apply to your project right now. I liked the bit of the conversation about the rule of one, and writing to one person, and there is one call to action, there is one outcome, and one path forward. Just from a writing standpoint, do you ever find this where it's super easy to just spin off email to a coworker or to a group, or and just the writing comes, and maybe it's even entertaining, it's fun, whatever. But then when you sit down to write a blog, it's like you just get writer's block, or it ends up coming off real businessy. I'm gonna rabbit trail just a little bit, as I'm prone to do from time to time on this, but I'm in a fantasy baseball league that I just have so much fun with. And we've been doing this league for 7 or 8 years, I think 7 actually. And so for a few of those, I was the commissioner, and once a week you write a summary of the week and send it out to the other managers. And it's fun. It's kind of nerdy for for to be doing that. But you just always got like good feedback from the other people in the league. Like always look forward to these summaries, ha ha ha, and it just always, I think about that example all the time, because when I sit down to try to write copy, either for my consulting practice or for the SaaS product I'm trying to build, every now and then it just doesn't flow. And I think to myself, why can't I sit down and try to write this? Why can't I tap into the same energy that lets the fantasy baseball updates just flow like water, and are more entertaining, by the way? Why can't I tap into that? And I think that folks who have mastered the idea of the rule of one, to have someone in mind that you are writing specifically to, I think that's what they've done, is that they've just been able to master that through practice, and can tap into that, and it just makes writing more fun. Producing whatever it is, it makes it easier, and it should flow better when you're speaking to somebody. I'd love to hear what's been your experience as you try to write documentation or marketing materials in your work. How do you find a way to effortlessly tap into that sense of flow, as far as words go? I really liked the suggestion and the advice of the email being what's going on in your world, when we were talking about the initial onboarding and welcome sequence. What is going on in your world that caused you to sign up for this trial? That is just is so straightforward. I cannot wait to test this. I cannot wait to apply this. It loops back to what we learned from Val in episode 7. If you've not listened to that one, highly recommend it. Where she kind of fleshes out like, hey, welcome to product name is the worst first email you can send. It needs to be brief, it needs to be personal, and it needs to be about them. It's like, welcoming someone into the home, as a guest. What's happening? What's up? How are you? And so it taps into that and gets into, jobs to be done language and approach, which, is the one of its core tenets is there is something going on in this person's world that caused them to be unsatisfied with the status quo. Like they didn't wake up and decide they want your thing. They actually don't even want your thing. They want progress and improvement for themselves. And so what you're trying to tap into that, find it so that you can amplify it and satisfy it, et cetera, et cetera. And the straightforward black and white advice of that initial welcome email it should ask, what is going on in your world that caused you to sign up for this trial today? Imagine if you had 10 answers to that question. I think that's really, really solid. And let's see, finally, like this concept of a qualitative research repository. And I think most especially can begin just as a Google Drive folder that you're just dumping things into, categorized docs, documents, and worksheets. We have all had the experience of, oh man, where did I got was that in an email, or did I drop that into, was that like through a Slack support request from one of my beta users, that kind of thing. So if there's a way that through a process you can start to collect those things, or if you are far enough along that you've begun spending and paying for services, then that Enjoy HQ sounds like a service that's worth exploring. Okay, great, good stuff to apply immediately with review mining to improve your copywriting. Rule of one: ask them what's going on in your world and start a qualitative research repository. Great stuff. I would love to hear what you all think about this episode, about the show in general. I am B-Ray on Twitter. Shoot me a message over there, B-Ray. That is B as in bit, R as in reserve, H as in hydraulic, E as in extraction, and A as in airway. I would love to hear from you there. And please, if you're enjoying this show, could you just scroll down in your app right now, leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts, wherever you listen to your shows. It's just really is just the best way for people to find the show, which makes it easier for me to attract guests, and the show gets better from there. So if you've got a minute or two just to do that, that would be fantastic. And I'll talk to you next time.